This podcast contains paid advertisements, but more on that later. Welcome to the O'Connor Bootstrap podcast, where I discuss how you can grow your business by the bootstraps. This applies to everyone with an entrepreneurial spirit. That includes bootstrappers just starting out, established business owners, and business leaders. My goal is to help you grow both personally and professionally. I'm your host, Isaiah O'Connor. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible, the world's largest collection of audiobooks. The reason I've chosen Audible as my favorite sponsor and my very first sponsor is because I love them. They have provided me so much information and resources to help grow my business, help me actually with my marriage, be a better father, be a better husband, be a better businessman, because of the content that I was able to download and listen to on Audible. The great thing about this content is you can listen to it and you don't even have time for anything else. As if you're like me, very, very busy, I run podcasts. I'm well behind on the blog I should be writing. I'm running my balloon business, or trying to. I do a lot of research for the environmental factors of the balloon industry. I have 2 kids, and because of the coronavirus, I'm also actively looking for work because my main business has taken a major blow. So I'm a busy guy. I don't have time anymore to really sit down and read like I used to. Therefore, I use Audible all the time to listen to books when I'm doing things like cleaning the kitchen, driving to my office, driving to an event, and all these other tasks that need to be done that don't require a lot of brain work. I listen to books, as that keeps me going and keeps me informed and keeps me really, builds me up as a businessman. And one of my favorite books on Audible that I highly recommend, if there's one business book I highly suggest, it's this one. This is one of the 2, and that is the book Good to Great by Jim Collins. It gives the best overview of what makes a business work. And the great thing about the book, it's not just this guy's opinion. This book is basically years of research, and these are the conclusions drawn from the research that he provides, which, in my opinion, makes it a lot more reliable as a business guide. And it gives, like I said, a big picture, which goes into today's thing. So the book is Good to Great by Jim Collins. It's an amazing book. It's one of the foundational books of business. If there's only one business book to get, this is one of the 2 I recommend. The other is EntreLeadership by Dave Ramsey. So if you want to get this book, you can get a free copy over at audible.com/bootstrap with a capital B. That's audible.com/bootstrap with a capital B. And you can get a free 30-day trial where you get 1 audiobook, 2 Audible originals, and then you can also have access to the entire Audible listening library for that entire time. There is no commitment. You can cancel at any time, but odds are you won't want to cancel, and it's only $14.95 a month. It's really an amazing service, and I love it. I have well over 100 books at this point, and it's kept me going very well. Just remember that's audible.com/bootstrap with a capital B, and that really helps us out as well. Thank you. So, today's subject is missing the big picture. As I was talking about, that book, it really covers the whole big picture of business, from leadership to your people to technology to everything that matters in business. And it's very important to see the big picture. Matter of fact, in Good to Great, there's some really big examples of some leaders that saw the big picture and took drastic action. The one that sticks in my mind the most is the guy that was working for Kimberly-Clark, a paper company that made paper products. And the leader, I forgot the guy's name, decided that it was not important to create the paper that they used to make the products. The most important part was focusing on making paper-based products. And so, much to the consternation of the board, and with a very firm focus on the big picture, he decided to sell all the paper mills. That's right, a paper company selling all its paper mills. He figured their focus should be on the end product of the Kleenex and the toilet paper and the diapers and everything else paper-based. That was the products they wanted to sell. That's the business part they were focused on. They didn't need paper mills to do this. They didn't need paper mills to do this. They just needed the paper, and they could buy that from the mills. And the mills were a liability, extra overhead, etc. They could just buy the ready-made product and use it in their other products. This was a key factor in their success. And people thought he was crazy to do it, but he saw the big picture. Another example was the leader of the Walgreens chain. Another example was the leader of Walgreens. Walgreens, known for its drugstores today, actually used to have a chain of restaurants as well. And the leader of Walgreens told his company, you have 1 year to get us 100% out of the restaurant business. And the restaurants they were in were doing pretty decently. They weren't horrible. They weren't great. But they were successful. They were making money. But he wanted out. He wanted to focus only on the drugstore part of the company. And he was right because he saw the big picture. And he was very focused on it and determined. Apparently, about 3 months after he made this announcement, he overheard a couple of his managers saying, well, we have a year to get these restaurants sold and get out of the business. He walked up behind him and said, correction. You have 9 months to get us out. He was keeping track, and he was very determined because he knew the big picture was they were the best at opening up little drugstores and pharmacies. That was the main focus, and that was where they should be focused. He saw the big picture, and so they did it. They were making short-term sacrifices for long-term gains. That is the big picture. Now, this was inspired because I was talking to a friend of mine about when I was working at the casino. And as I was explaining it, it goes back to one of my earlier podcasts. I talked about how the general manager at one point used to be an accountant, but he got himself promoted up into the general manager position. I talked about this when I was talking about the Peter principle. He was a good accountant from what I gathered, but he wasn't great with people. And the problem is, if you focus on just the numbers, you can miss the overall big picture. And that's what this guy was about. I had a private conversation with him when I first moved back to the casinos, and I immediately got the feeling that he was all about the money, all about the numbers, all about the bottom line, and was missing the big picture. Two of the big decisions he did make that seemed good for him initially really came back to bite him. The first was he shut down the arcade at the Harrah's Casino. Now, just to clarify a little bit, I understand why he wanted to get rid of it at first, because it seemed to be redundant. Harrah's had its biggest competitor back in the day of Harvey's. Harrah's Casino and Harvey's Casino were the two big competitors in town. They both had arcades for the kids, and eventually the Harrah's Corporation bought up the Harvey's Corporation. And so we owned both buildings, both casinos. And so part of what he did was to try to get rid of all the redundant departments, anything that was not worthwhile having two of. And one of those decisions was the Harrah's Arcade. He decided that he'd rather save money on the employees and overhead and only have one arcade, so he shut down the Harrah's Arcade and kept the Harvey's Arcade open. Now, when I had talked to him, I had gone and I was had moved away to Colorado for a few years, and I'd moved back, and I went back to live in my hometown of Lake Tahoe, went to go get a job at the arcade, and the arcade was closed. So I got a job in the cashier cage instead and worked as a cashier. So when I talked to him, I said, "Hey, Joe," his name was Joe. I said, "Hey, Joe, I just saying I moved back and the arcade was closed, so I got a job at the cashier cage instead." He immediately got very defensive and said, "Well, it was a good idea to close the arcade, and we didn't lose that much money. And there was more, we thought we lost more, but then we found some money that we thought we had lost, and it wasn't really that bad that we closed the arcade down. And we didn't really lose that much money." I was honestly a little surprised with his reaction because I was not accusing him of anything. I just simply stated that I had worked at the arcade, and in the time that I was gone from town and came back, they had closed it and I couldn't work there anymore. That was it. It was just kind of letting him know where I was coming from, etc. And he got very defensive and talked about how he lost a lot of money in the arcade, but it wasn't that big of a deal. The problem was, big picture part one that he missed was, sure, we had now 2 arcades under our control. However, we had 2 totally different target markets for the arcades. The Harrah's arcade was called the Harrah's Family Fun Center. And being the Family Fun Center, our focus was more for families. More family friendly, better, brighter lit, very clean, very open. We had a play area for the kids. It was more kid friendly, more family friendly than the Harvey's arcade, which was more teenager friendly. It was a little bit darker, more cave-like, not as many lights, not as brightly lit, no special play area for kids, not as much games for little kids. It was aimed at older teenagers, not children. That was big picture part one that he missed. Second of all, these 2 casinos are 2 giant hotel casinos. I think one has 16 floors, one has 18 floors. They're big. And being a actual hotel, we had a lot of families coming. And the parents did not want to go across the street to take their kids to go do something. They wanted to take their kids in the same building they were in. Therefore, they didn't go take their kids to the arcade across the street when there was only one arcade. They just simply didn't bother. Plus, there was a few high rollers whose children were under 21. They couldn't be on the casino floor, but they were old enough to be alone, and they would go down and hang out in the arcade. And with the arcade closed, they couldn't do that, and the parents did not want them in a separate building than the ones that they were in. Again, they didn't send them across the street because they wanted them nearby. So another big picture fell just in one area. This guy was, like I said, an accountant. He just said, numbers, we don't need to double the employees for something we have, and didn't think big picture. The next big failure, and I think this is part of what led to his demise as general manager, which was he got rid of the penny slot section at the Harvey's casino. He tried to get rid of as many penny slots as possible. For those of you who don't know, a penny slot is a slot machine whose price is a penny or up to maybe 5 cents, but no more than 25 cents per play. Penny slots. And there's some slot machines, matter of fact, a lot of machines where the minimum bet is 1 penny. And so, of course, being a bottom line money guy, he goes, why do we have penny slots that only bring us in pennies per time? 2 big picture failures in this. First and foremost, penny slots seem like they're a cheap way to play at a casino. You can take $1, bet 1 penny at a time, and be there for an hour. I know I've done that waiting for a bus, bored to tears, so I went and sat down and played penny slots because I had $1, and it was fun. Just kill time. But that's the minimum bet. The maximum bet on a lot of these penny slots are $5 to $10 per pull. The max bet on a lot of quarter machines is $1.50 a pull. So a penny slot seems like it's not that big of a bet, but when you do the max bet, the most you can bet at a time on the most lines, all this stuff, you add it all together, it can be $4 or $5 per bet every single time. So penny slots can bring in a huge amount of revenue, and often do, because people like to play them, and they feel like they're not spending that much money, and sometimes they spend a lot more than they would at a quarter machine, or even a 50-cent machine, or whatever. So first big picture miss is they're not just pennies. You can bet a lot of money on a penny slot. Next is people who like the penny slots. You get a lot more people. You get a lot more customers. And yes, granted, in the casino business, about 30% of the customers bring in 70% of the revenue, and 70% of the customers only bring in 30% of the revenue. Which means he figured these guys were bringing in only 30% of the revenue, if that, and therefore were not important. He wanted to focus on the high rollers, the big players that will come in and bring and play in one day my entire paycheck for a year. He wanted those guys to come in. So he wanted to focus on them, and he wanted to get rid of these riff-raff that come in to play penny slots because they're bored or whatever. He wanted to get rid of them and keep the high rollers. Again, bottom line, looking at raw numbers makes sense. I admit, when he was talking about this and how he wanted to not focus on the low-end players but focus on the high rollers, I just about got myself in trouble. I almost raised my hand and said, if you don't want that 30% of revenue, I'll take it. Because 30% of a casino's revenue is still a lot of money. Now, he wanted to kind of push that away. That was part of it. People stopped coming to play. When he got rid of the penny slot, people just didn't come to play at all. They didn't switch to quarters. They didn't switch to dollars. They just stayed away, so they lost revenue. And the other problem is, when you get the locals and the low-end players gone, the casino seems a lot more empty and a lot more quiet. And a quiet casino is unlucky. Or rather, it seems unlucky, especially to high rollers who are very superstitious. A quiet casino with no one winning, no one playing, no activity means it's not lucky. And an unlucky casino is not a casino they want to play with, so they won't play at a quiet casino. So by getting rid of the penny slots, getting rid of penny slot players, he in turn was actually driving away the high rollers that he wanted to attract. So again, missed the big picture on this. This was a very important thing. He really messed up because all he was looking was at one small portion, the bottom line, just the money, just the bottom dollar, and not thinking of everything else that goes into play when you're working at a casino or running a casino. And in all fairness, I don't think the guy should have ever been put into a management position that was not an accountant. From all accounts, again, he was a pretty good accountant, which is why he got promoted. Go check out my podcast on the Peter Principle, which is the idea that you promote somebody out of a place of competency into a place of incompetency. So I think that was part of the problem. But again, when it comes to big picture, you got to look at the overall big picture of what's going on to make the right decisions. Because if you make decisions based only on the bottom dollars, only on the dollar amount, you miss things. Another big picture problem, which other managers made there at the casinos, and actually this is a big picture problem that I've seen made by a lot of businesses, And that is, in order to save money, you fire employees. You lay off employees. You cut employee cost by getting rid of employees, cutting hours, etc. Because that's the easiest cost to control in a business is your labor cost. And it's fine to lay off employees if you have to in positions that they're redundant or not really needed, etc. There's some pretty good reasons to lay off employees. Don't get me wrong. I think there's a time and place for everything. Now, granted, being in a position to have to lay off employees is a bad position to be in, and I hope you never have to be there. But if you do, there are the time and place to do this. But one problem is if you deem employees to be non-essential and get rid of them, it may backfire because they may be more essential than you think. Again, up on the casino floor, they had replaced all the slot machines. They replaced them all from coin machines to paper machines. Now, again, what do I mean by that? For most of the world that don't have a casino nearby and hang out, the old coin machines are what you saw in movies. You put a quarter in or a dime in or whatever. You pull the handle, the reels spin, and if you get a jackpot, coins come flooding out, which is really fun. But they've eventually came up with a new type of slot machine, which is you put your money in, you pull the roll, the handle, or you press the start button or whatever, and out comes a ticket with your winnings on it. And you take the ticket in and you redeem the ticket for money, which is a lot easier, presents a lot less problems for the machine, less maintenance on the machine. You don't have to have people going out and adding coins into the machines consistently. The less overall mechanical moving parts, the less problems you have. Of course, you don't get coin jams. You don't have problems with machines getting stuck or whatever. And therefore, you don't need nearly as many, as they called them, slot attendants to be taking care of the machines and fixing the machines. You need less of them to do the work. The problem was they cut it back way too much. Because in a casino, you have two main contact people with the customers providing customer service, and that is the slot attendants and the hostess girls, the servers that go out, and the servers that go out and deliver drinks to everyone on the floor. And these are vital people. Now, the slot attendants also make change. They carry with them change, and they make change with the clients all the time. The customers wave them down, they come and they get change. Or they wave them down, they come and they help them with the machine, or they watch the machine for them while they go to the bathroom. There's a lot of things that a slot attendant will do for the clients. And when they got rid of a lot of slot attendants, and not only that, they got rid of the most skilled and most experienced slot attendants by offering them a golden parachute. Hey, if you leave, we'll give you an extra big bonus to leave, etc. And the most skilled took it and left. That left the less skilled, for the most part, slot attendants, and much fewer of them. And even though they didn't have to run around and add coins to the machines all the time, the customers noticed that it had less people helping them out. And with less people helping them out, they got mad and they left and they didn't come back. Again, big picture. Sometimes you got to look and pay attention, because when you remove employees, especially customer service employees that are customer contact, when you reduce the amount of employees, you by default reduce the amount of customer service level that you can provide. Granted, you can have way too many employees in a service department at a certain time, but if you're in a busy area, the more employees you have, the more customers they can serve, the more personal attention they can give, and the better the overall customer experience is, and the more customers you will have, the more loyal customers you'll have, the more returning customers you'll have, etc. But if you go crazy and slash down the service people down to one or two people and they can't handle it, you will lose money and lose business, and most likely eventually use your business completely. Again, you need to look at big picture when you're making big decisions. Now, let's bring it back down to something a little bit more bootstrapper, a little bit more, I'm just one guy, I don't have all these employees, I'm not making these massive changes, massive ideas, I'm just trying to get by. So I'll give you an example from my own life here. When I first started my business, it took me about 2 years before I kind of landed on my business style, my business mission, kind of my focus. And one of my early ideas was to run birthday parties for children. I called my company at the time Unplugged Entertainment. And that was because I wanted to do games and stuff with children that kept them from having to be sitting on a laptop or a phone or a screen of some sort, but to do something outside of that and have some fun, which I still think had a pretty good idea behind it, but I failed to execute it right. It wasn't working out, and I did balloons still, but I did balloons, and I was trying to figure out how to teach origami and do juggling and do all this stuff, run birthday parties, run games for the kids, provide food, a full service party event planning thing for kids' birthday parties. It was a lot of work, and I was able to do it and make decent money. However, it wasn't a good enough thing to set up so I could do that for multiple parties. It was really hard work for the money, and I was really struggling, and I really wanted to do it. That was my main focus. That was my initial idea. But I had to step back and look at the big picture. The big picture was people wanted to hire me for the balloons. That was the main reason people liked to hire me. The main focus was the balloons. And so I looked at big picture. It's hard to make it cost effective ordering food in. You have to get a special license or have it fixed at a restaurant. You have to meet with the client. You have to spend hours planning it. You put a lot of work in it, and the overall return on investment is pretty low. And even though that was my original idea and it was fun, the big picture was it was causing me to fail as a business owner. So I switched to just balloons. I cut out the party planning, and my business did much better because I decided to take a stop, look at the big picture, and change direction, because the direction I was going in, even though that was the initial direction that got me started, was not the direction that my company could follow. So I had to stop, cut off the party planning part, cut off the whole birthday party, focus on planning the whole thing and doing everything, and switching it to, I'm just the entertainment, I'm just the guy with the balloons, and it made life so much better and so much easier to do. So I will wrap up with this. When you're making decisions with your company, big decisions, don't look just at the bottom line, look at the whole big picture. Any big decision, you need to look at how everything interacts. If I do this, will this part be harmed? If I do this, will this part be harmed? Look at the overall picture, look at the big picture, and also don't be afraid of making decisions that may cut into your revenue at first for a little while to make more revenue in the future. Plan ahead. Sometimes you need to plan to lose money for a little while, because if you lose money for a few months or even a year, but that leads to massive revenues 2, 3, 4 years down the road. Again, big picture. You got to make the plan, bite the bullet, and do what needs to be done. And one last thought on this, as a small bootstrapper, raising your prices is a big picture thing. If you raise your prices, a lot of people are afraid to raise their prices because they're afraid to lose customers. And I can tell you, if you raise your prices, you will lose customers. I've talked about this before. But you will gain other customers that have the money. And in general, what I've seen is when I've raised prices, my revenue has gone up. I've done less work, but still made more money. Big picture. Raise prices, you'll lose customers. Guaranteed. But you'll gain high-end clients that will pay you even more. Therefore, big picture, you do come out better in the end. So with that, just remember, big decisions equal big picture. Always take the big picture in when you're making big decisions. All your decisions should be made within the realm of the bigger picture. Obviously not if you're getting a mocha or regular coffee that morning. But you know what I mean. Big decisions need the big picture. You have a good day. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. If you found value in this content, please leave a comment and give us a 5-star rating on whichever podcast platform you use. We're on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google, and most other podcast platforms. If you would like to support us, you can check out our sponsor links, or if you'd like to support us directly, you can donate or join our membership program at buymeacoffee.com/bootstrap. Of course, it really helps when you share these podcasts with your friends as well. If you'd like to interact with me and other bootstrappers and leaders, you can join us over at our O'Connor Bootstrap Podcast Facebook group. You have been listening to the O'Connor Bootstrap Podcast, an Atheoz Business Solutions podcast. For a companion podcast, the Atheoz Business Podcast, which is hosted by Jason St. Clair, past episodes and related blogs, please check out our website at www.atheoz.com, which is at www.atheoz.com or theoz.com. Until next time, I have been your friendly neighborhood entrepreneur, Isaiah O'Connor.